Hello, welcome back to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form with day 13 of Chucktober, reviewing the Chucky franchise. And this time I'm on season 1, episode 6, Cape Queer. Of course, an homage to the psychological thriller Cape Fear. Apparently there have been two film adaptations of that book, and the one from the early 90s seems to be the more popular of the two. I do remember a sort of homage to it in Seinfeld, and yeah, it's a film that a lot of film fans are like really familiar with from the looks of it, which I guess is why Devin watches bits of that film in this episode and sort of gives some inspiration for setting up traps and stuff. And I think a figure in there is an homage to something that appears in the movie. So this episode aired November 16th, 2021. It was written by Nick Ziegler and Sarah Acosta. So it's the same writing team that wrote episode 3, I Like to Be Hugged. This one was directed by Samir Rehem. And just looking at Samir's credits, so it's been active for quite a while. I think the thing that Samir, or one of the things that Samir is known for, is directing a short called The Answer Key. Has also directed 4 episodes, or sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing, 14 episodes of Degrassi The Next Generation, 4 episodes of Degrassi Next Class. I assume that's like the follow up series. Let's see. There's like a lot of stuff listed in here. Something called In the Dark, 2 episodes of that. 2 episodes of Orphan Black Echoes. I've seen the original show, and I had heard that that newer Orphan Black show was gonna happen, and didn't realize it happened until after I saw an article about it getting canceled. So there you go. Hashtag renew Chucky. Hashtag save Chucky. Hashtag review Chucky. This episode begins with narration by Jennifer Tilly as Tiffany. You know, these episodes, they all begin with recaps of what happened before, but this one was a little different in that it also throws in the soul transfer thing, or the soul switch that Tiffany committed with Jennifer Tilly in Seed of Chucky. So we see a little bit of archive footage there. It's kind of strange to me that Jennifer Tilly narrates the recap of this episode and not the first one she appears in, you know, the previous one. And I don't know if it was my TV this time around, but her voice sounded kind of different in this narration. I can't remember thinking that when I first watched the episode when it aired. So I don't know if it's like my TV or what, like maybe the volume or something weird. The 2 episodes before this, I could not stay up late enough to, you know, I couldn't stay awake past midnight to watch them, so I watched those in the morning. But this one I was able to watch right at midnight from beginning to end. Might even be the first of these episodes I've rewatched. I've done that with on this go around, you know, watching at midnight from beginning to end. I could be wrong, but yeah. Um, this also brings forth threads that were left hanging in Cult of Chucky. So we pick up with Andy and Kyle. So what we hear later in the episode is that Andy had broken out of Harrogate, you know, the mental hospital, 2 weeks prior to this. And so I think at some point the intentionality was that Cult of Chucky is 2 weeks before the middle of this show. But over time, you know, with the specific dates and years that are given, it's really hard to reconcile all that. So I kind of headcanon that Andy was institutionalized for 4 years. Like it took quite a while for him to get out. And if that's the case, it kind of makes you wonder how much of a fight did Kyle have to put up? Like, what was she able to do? Did his mother, Karen, try doing anything? Is she even still alive? Like, I don't know. Like, for all we know, she may have passed away peacefully by this point. That can happen. Um, but yeah, like that's sort of what I like to think is that he was in Harrogate for quite a while, and that's where he was when the Skype call in episode one happened. Because later on, they do make a point that Harrogate is in Rhode Island, and Jake says, "Oh, about a month ago, I got a call from Rhode Island." So I think Andy was sneaking around in Harrogate and somehow made the Skype call or whatever from within. And when I said is somebody there, is probably like a staff member or something. But yeah, Andy and Kyle are driving around. They pretend that they are census takers. So they visit this family and they pretend that, oh, part of this census taking, the survey thing is asking about your dolls, the other members of the quote unquote family. And so the little girl in this family unit, she brings out all her dolls and they're like, is there anyone missing? And she's like, oh, I forgot Charlie. And so she goes and comes back with a Chucky doll, and we see that the fingers look melted. So this is the Chucky doll from, well, not literally the same prop, but in universe, it's supposed to be the same doll that was in Cult of Chucky and put a part of his soul in Nika at the end of that movie. So, Chucky says, "Hi, I'm Charlie." Hesitates a little bit, but he knows that Andy and Kyle are onto him and almost harms the family. But then Andy and Kyle shoot the doll in the head and then repeatedly like do this. There's like this Pulp Fiction esque shot where we see them like shooting down on the floor. It's like we're looking from the doll's perspective or something. And the family is probably traumatized as they speculate, but as they're driving at night, Andy's like, well, at least they live, and we turned out all right. And there's like a little bit of archive footage from Child's Play 2, young Kyle and Andy trying to thwart Chucky. Um, and Andy looks at this photo of Kyle with um, some sort of partner. I guess it's like her boyfriend or husband or something. I don't really remember, but some sort of partner. It seems he's like at least one of us did. Like she turned out fine, whereas Kyle sort of um, has this mini interrogation slash show of concern for Andy over the fact that he kept Chucky head alive for 4 years, and she does say 4 years. So between Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, and we get confirmation that she took care of it. Like we don't see footage of her destroying the doll head, but it's pretty heavily uh, confirmed. I guess I don't even want to say implied. I feel like it's confirmed that she destroyed the scarred Chucky's head. And Andy says, it's something I learned in military camp. You gotta know your enemy, and sort of tries to rationalize the torture that he inflicted on the Chucky head. I do like how the legacy of Child's Play 3 is basically, yeah, Andy went to this military academy, and that informs some of his skills and his behavior here. And it's one of the more negatively received installments of the franchise, but I still like that it somehow carries over into these later installments. Like, yeah, that movie did happen, and it does still matter somewhat. So Kyle's like, so there should be only one doll left, right? And Andy explains that there was a woman whom Chucky put some of his soul into as well, talking about Nika. Um, so yeah, I really like seeing the interaction between Andy and Kyle here because we didn't get to see them interact in Cult of Chucky. Kyle only appears at the very end in the post credit scene. So to see them back together, it, it's like what Jennifer Tilly posted. Well, the real life actress, not the character based on the real life actress. Um, what she posted before this episode aired was like she referred to them as the OGs, Alex Vincent and Christine Elise. So it really is cool, like that they're referred to as that by her. So we cut back to, uh, I guess the next bit is the school. Uh, the kids are in Miss Fairchild's class, and then Devon's mom, Kim, comes in and arrests Miss Fairchild. Um, and is it Miss or Mrs.? I'm like looking at something that says Mrs., but I don't remember her being married. But yeah, she gets arrested because her fingerprints were found in Principal McVeigh's office. And later they do mention that she had a troubled past and I guess some like misdemeanors or something. I kind of get a sense that maybe there was something else intended for Mrs. Fair or Miss Fairchild when season one was being written, and then they sort of did away with whatever they had in mind. There was some speculation on fans' parts that she might be Glenda, or whatever, but the math and the ages just wouldn't have matched up really. So, yeah, she's the prime suspect, and Devin tries to tell his mom she didn't do it, but he can't explain to her without, logically why it isn't her, because nobody's gonna believe it's like a killer doll or whatever. Um, so yeah, she basically takes the heat for all of this, and the kids want to be able to prove her innocence. So they come up with the idea of getting in touch with Andy Barclay since he survived Chucky and has all this experience. And uh, we also get this meeting, like this family meeting, where Junior and his parents, Bree reveals to Junior and Logan that she has cancer and this is what she's been hiding. And Logan leaves the room at some point during this conversation because he can't handle it. And Jake overhears the conversation. And so you can see in his face that he feels really bad about what Junior is going through and that uh, Bree is going through this. So really nice acting chops there. And Junior is understandably, really, really upset. And yeah, so we got that whole thing going on. And later, Junior tries to open up about all this to Lexi. And he also mentions that he feels like Lexi isn't always there listening to him. And her attention does wander a little bit as Devin and Jake are trying to find Andy online. If they see that Andy doesn't have an Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter, but they do find out that he has a Facebook, and I guess get his phone number through there. And sorry, I was checking something. And before making the call, Jake says, "How old is Andy now?" And Devin's like, 40. And Jake seems like really skeptical because I don't know, maybe he just hates interacting with 40-year-olds. Like, I don't know. Like, he doesn't think that an adult at this point in their 40s would be very helpful or something. Like, I don't know. Um, but yeah, if this is 2021, then Andy would be 39 at this point. In fact, I think this episode maybe takes place, if it's the day after what happened in the previous episode, it could be November 9th, and therefore Andy's 39th birthday. So they could be rounding a bit. And this is also why I don't pin this in 2017, because if that were the case, Andy would be 35 ish. Um, so they call Andy on the cell phone, and they mentioned that Chucky would probably be wherever. I think Andy and Kyle are in Virginia at this point. They're on the road, and Andy mentions that Chucky would go wherever someone is most vulnerable or something, and Jake says Junior's house. I think they're at Lexi's house when they're making this call. So they think that Chucky's next move will be to break into Junior's house, where Jake is staying. Um, so what happens next? There's this whole thing that's going on. Coming back to Tiffany and Nika. Uh, well, Chucky is still possessing Nika at this point in the Hackensack Hotel. Uh, Tiffany is trying to pack a dead body in her suitcase, and Chucky's really lecturing her on like how to properly pack, like cutting up the body or whatever. And she cuts off the hand, and she's like, "Well, you take care of it." And then because she sees the blood, Nika comes back to the surface and loses the ability to walk once again, as Tiffany leaves the room for a little bit. And then later, Nika pretends that Chucky is still in possession of her and does this poker game with Tiffany. I don't know what happened that led to this poker game happening, but she does all these bluffs. And at one point, Tiffany is like, "Do you remember that night at Niagara Falls all those years ago?" Alluding to the events of Bride of Chucky. And Nika is trying to bluff her way out, but then Tiffany points out that Chucky wouldn't bite his fingernails, and that she stabbed Nika in the leg like 10 minutes prior and didn't scream like Chucky would. So the ruse has not worked. Uh, and yet Tiffany says she really likes the way that Nika looks at her when she and Chucky are together, when Chucky is in possession of Nika. And so she wants to keep Nika around and not have Chucky come back to the surface. So she knocks out Nika. And she also says that she bought a house for them, which turns out to be Charles Lee Ray's childhood home. And it scares the realtor when Tiffany mentions, "Oh, my fiance used to live here." And she sort of puts the pieces together that no one has lived there since whenever. Or maybe she doesn't think Charles Lee Ray's still around, and maybe she thinks Tiffany is insane, which, I mean, she is pretty psychotic, but yeah, maybe that's what scares her off. But there's also a package that arrived for Tiffany, which I think we find out in either the next episode or the episode after what exactly it is. So yeah, Tiffany has that house. And there's also a flashback to 1987 at some point showing younger Tiffany and Charles trying to buy this nice looking car from someone. And the guy says, "Good classic never goes out of style." And they're like, "What did you just say?" And this felt really stupid, like an explanation for maybe why Chucky says a good classic never goes out of style and Bride of Chucky. Like, we did not need the backstory for why he would say that line. It just works in the context of the scene because he thinks that the knife is classic. But here he goes on a rant about how the car is not vintage and not retro, kind of time back to Jake's explanation of the difference between retro and vintage in the first episode. But he and Tiffany end up killing the guy and driving off. And Chucky also has this book about voodoo. So we see that by this point he's started dabbling and learning about how to do these spells and whatnot that would define the rest of his life, basically. But cutting back to the kids, um, well, I guess first cutting back to Junior, like Bree drives to the psychiatrist, Dr. Mixter, I think is her name, and she leaves Junior in the car but tells him that she loves him. And um, then he puts on his earbuds and listens to music, and I think you hear Chucky laugh, so I think he's hiding in the car, and then he follows Bree into the building. And during the therapy session, Bree says that admitting her burden didn't make things better, and that she's decided that she's not going to do treatment, which like was kind of confusing at first, but I think it gets explained that she feels like doing treatment would be a burden on the family, and she wants to savor every moment that she can with them. So, trying to live life how they normally would until the inevitable moment when she passes, as opposed to like having to, I don't know, do appointments for treatment and having that get in the way. So that's kind of how I read it. But as she leaves Dr. Mixter's office, that's her name, right? Like, I feel like I'm second guessing myself. Um, okay, yeah, it is. Okay. And, like, she leaves the office, still in the building, and she almost texts Logan saying, "We need to talk," but decides against sending it. And meanwhile, Chucky gets this cart full of stuff and pushes it so that it knocks Bree through the window. Like she gets defenestrated. And I definitely got Hannibal season 2 finale vibes here. I wouldn't be surprised if this was Don Mancini, if he like wanted this type of shot in the episode. But yeah, she falls. The cart falls on a car first, and then she lands on top of uh, the car where Junior is. He gets out. Everyone is really shocked. There are other people in the parking lot, really disturbed by this, and it really is sad. Really is tragic. Later, Dr. Mixter tries talking to Junior and Logan at their place, and Logan's like, "You never had an inkling that she would try something like this." So they basically think that Bree ended herself. And Jake goes up to Junior and is like, "I don't think your mom killed herself." And Junior is like, "Just stay away from me. Everything was good before you came along." And yeah, there's that resentment there. And Jake at this point, he doesn't say Chucky did it, but he says he doesn't think his mom uh like did it herself. So um Junior is it's very it feels very real what Junior is going through and how he's reacting to all of this. Um so yeah, the trio really need to do something. We cut to at some point Devin is in his room and he's watching Cape Fear, like I mentioned, on his laptop. But he turns it off when his mom comes in, and he asks, "How do you know when you like someone?" And she talks about how she felt meeting his dad, and then he says that that's how he feels around Jake, or maybe she asks if that's how he feels around Jake, and he does say, "I was worried that you would see me different," and she's like, "And nothing has changed." And it's a very wholesome moment how accepting she is of him being gay, and they have this wholesome hug, and she's like, "Maybe we can invite Jake for a double feature next week, movie night like we used to do, that type of thing." And it's such a heartwarming moment, and it makes what happens later in the episode really, really sad. So the trio set up these precautions and these tripwires and traps and whatever in Junior's home, while Junior and Logan are at the funeral home. And Lexi goes upstairs. Devin and Jake stay downstairs. And Devin talks about the interaction with his mom and how she accepts him, and also Jake now that she doesn't think he's a killer or whatever. And so he asks, "What kind of movies do you like?" And Jake's like, "Well, horror. I used to anyway." And he asks, Devin asks who's his favorite. I don't remember if he says Scream Queen or Final Girl. I think he says Final Girl. And Jake says Laurie Strode, from Halloween, played by Jamie Lee Curtis. And Devin says she's going to Saturn this year. And Jake's like, oh, she's going an Oscar. She's amazing. I'd like to point out that in 2021, the Saturn Awards, I had to look this up, happened in late October. This episode takes place in November, so I don't know. Are we supposed to pretend that in this universe the Saturn Awards happen like a month or two later or something? I don't know, but in any case, apparently she that year was nominated for a Saturn for Knives Out. I don't think she won though. This also would have been around the time that Halloween Kills came out. The first sequel to Halloween 2018, which 2018 was a really great sequel to the original. And then I think they really dropped the ball with Kills and especially Ends a year after this. But yeah, I guess it also calls into question the opening scene of Bride of Chucky, where it seems to imply that Michael Myers is in the same universe as all this. But I don't know, maybe you could reason that, oh, in the Chucky universe, there were movies based on those things that happened in Haddonfield. That feels like a very Chucky universe thing to happen. So maybe that's how you could reason that, like, the Thorn trilogy or whatever it's called in the Halloween series are also movies made up for the within the Chucky universe, and maybe H20 and Resurrection as well. I don't know. I'm overthinking this, I guess. But Chucky infiltrates the house. He gets to Lexi and tries convincing her to kill Jake because Jake tried to get her killed, but she doesn't give in to any of that. And Devin's mom, Kim, she comes into the house and she had also tried calling Devin earlier when they were sitting around. So I'm trying to remember if that was why she went into this place. Maybe she was concerned that, something had happened to Devin. So that would make things even more tragic if that was the case. Because if Devin had answered, maybe that could have been prevented. But maybe I'm misremembering. But in any case, she goes into the house and she actually sees Chucky, like, for real. Like he gets on her shoulder and makes her fall down these really this really large staircase, and she ends up on the floor dead with her head. I think her head, it has like been turned 180 degrees as a result of the fall, which I think makes this feel too like, I know that this show mixes comedy and horror, but I feel like in this instance, like, this death is such a tragedy that I feel like having her head look like that feels too um like tonal dissonant or whatever. um maybe this is death just really, like, it's really tragic that we get two mother deaths in this episode, like within just one episode. um yeah, it's like really, really heavy stuff, and it's really sad because of the heartwarming stuff that happened with Devin and his mom earlier, and now that's, he's never gonna be able to talk to her again. So yeah, what a tragic ending to, close this on. um yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I had to say about this episode. I feel like I covered pretty much everything. But yeah, as for what I'd rate this, I kind of feel like maybe there's having both of those deaths within this one episode maybe feels like a bit too much, but I do like the progression of, the conflicts with the characters and also the wholesome moment between Devin and his mom. The Chucky and Tiffany stuff is progressing. Nika feels a bit more like a main character in this episode than in the previous one. Like, she feels more like she has a little more focus, a little more agency, even for just a little bit. I sort of wonder if maybe this is all just a matter of multiple writers dealing with Nika instead of just Don Mancini working with Nika. But I guess I'll ruminate on that as I continue talking about these episodes. So I'll be back tomorrow talking about episode 7, Twice the Grieving, Double the Loss. And yeah, there were two huge losses in this episode, a lot to grieve about. The rating. So I guess I'd rate Cape Queer 8.75 out of 10. Yeah, I don't know if that'll change, but that's my gut feeling for like the rating right now. It was nice seeing familiar faces like Andy and Kyle as well, but again, I feel like this show, I feel like maybe I felt this a little less this time around, but that the older legacy characters sometimes feel like they're kind of just there. Um, but yeah, anyway, I guess I'll talk more about that as I continue this coverage. So thanks for tuning in to Steven Shinder Reviews in video form for another installment of Chucktober, and I'll see you all next time.